So this is not the normal time that you see me, and there's a very good reason for that because the guest that I have for you right now is giving us a little bonus coverage. That's what we call this. And Jon Z is what they call my good friend back in Chicago. Jon Z Sports is where you can find him all over social media. The man in charge of Sports Talk Chicago is with me right now. This is Jon Z, and he joins me from my hometown of Chicago live. John, how are you, my man? Man, it's do you know how it's just so good to have you back on the scene, back on Snowman in the morning with our bonus coverage and everything. Man, I love having you on, and I love watching your stuff. You're great at what you do.
Hey, thank you, Brian. I love watching your stuff too. I see your channel's growing, and that's good to see. Great to see everybody grow at a good pace. Certainly been a lot of news recently that's allowed you and I to grow significantly with our audiences. So happy to break things down with you today and talk all things Chicago sports.
All right, let's get started, and we'll start with the Bears. There was something that you said, and it's so true. It's the thing that pisses me off with the Bears. Everyone wanted to know who the OC was going to be. Never mind the GM, never mind the head coach who was supposed to work in concert. Nothing has worked in concert with these hires as far as I'm concerned for the Chicago Bears. Give me your thoughts there. We'll start there.
Yeah, great point, and thank you for bringing that up, Brian. Basically, I was just disappointed a bit because throughout the entire hiring process, we were all so enamored. We were concerned about who's the head coach going to be, who's the GM going to be. Are they going to be like Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, different, similar? Are they going to be offensive minded? What are they going to do to improve the team? We hire both these guys. The Bears hire both these guys, and then all of a sudden, the focus shifts to the offensive coordinator. It's like everybody kind of conceded. They conceded and said, well, let's focus to something else. And then we'll focus on this guy and that guy and this guy. I thought the whole point of this was to focus on the head coach. I thought the head coach was supposed to come in, fix Justin Fields, number one, and fix this team, number two. And instead, we got a situation where, sure, everybody's happy, everyone's cautiously optimistic. That's been the word that I've heard mostly from a lot of fans who watch my shows. But more than anything, we see people freaking out, getting excited about Luke Getsy. Now, look, I'm fine with that. I mean, that's acceptable. He's supposed to be a pretty good offensive mind, passing game coordinator for the Packers. I just didn't like that people didn't really hold the organization accountable enough for their hires. And I'm not saying Eberflus is going to be bad or Poles is going to be bad. But again, for the past 3 weeks during that hiring process, the emphasis was head coach. Get an offensive mind. Find Justin Fields some help. At the end of the day, they didn't do that.
No.
They hired somebody with no experience who was a defensive mind. Maybe he works, and that's great. But people should be holding this team accountable instead of going, well, let's move on to the offensive coordinator, see what he could do. People should have been more, not even enraged, but just hold this team more accountable for the actions that they've made. They certainly haven't deserved nor earned trust from their public and from their fans over the past 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, even ever since the Super Bowl, really, when they won in 1985. So these are things, small things that maybe don't matter to a lot of people. Everyone's so happy about these new hires and this new change and this new feeling at Alice Hall. But these are things that stick with me. And, no one else is going to call them out. I'll make sure I do.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I mean, I've watched this organization just disintegrate. Even during the 2006 season, that team quickly disintegrated after they went to the Super Bowl and they got smacked around by the Indianapolis Colts, and there was no accountability whatsoever. Everybody was just so happy that the Chicago Bears got to the Super Bowl. I mean, I thought the focus was on winning the darn thing. You did in 85 with a dominant team, but how fast did that team disintegrate? Now, and you made another great point, it just seems like Ryan Poles was brought in, put puppet strings on, and he was handed a list that he didn't make up, and he was forced to choose from that list. That's where all this started.
And you got to remember this too, Brian, and this is pretty interesting. I found this out the day after Eberflus was hired. Eberflus and Poles have the same agent. What do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there are just too many ties here. And again, I'm not saying that these guys are going to be bad. We
Right.
don't know anything yet, but it's fishy for sure. The process that went into hiring both of them, I didn't like it. I wish there could have been more transparency, and more than that, I wish there could have been more options.
Yeah.
As you said correctly, Poles was given a list. So people say, oh, hey, Poles made the list. No. He was given a list. These interviews were done in concert with his interview.
Yep.
So when he was hired, the Bears had already done a number of head coaching interviews. There were finalists named before Poles was hired. That should already tell you that this was not his list. And I get
No.
it, okay, it was his decision from those three, but why not interview other people? Why not expand the search a bit? Now that you're GM, hey, let's bring back Brian Dable for a second interview. Let's bring back Leslie Frazier for another interview. I'm not saying he's the best guy for the job, but bring in other people and get your own perspective on them. Now that you're the GM, he didn't do that. He was handed a list. Then they told him essentially pick from who you want from these three. Well, there could have been many more candidates and many more options had you been given the ability to interview those candidates and those options. He didn't, and that's another thing that scared me.
And the other thing is, that's another thing that scared me. And the other thing is, for me, before all the craziness went down, why didn't you call Brian Flores?
Exactly. Here's my problem with Brian Flores. I mean, lawsuit aside, let's talk about him as a coach. I don't think he's horrible. I think he played somewhat of a role when it came to Tua Tagovailoa's development and how it didn't really go according to plan. And I wish the best for Tua. I hope that he can develop into the quarterback that Miami needs. That was my only quip with Flores himself. Obviously a leader. Obviously a guy that his players like to play for and respected. That was great. My only concern was Tua because, we just had a Mitch Trubisky problem here with Matt Nagy. I didn't want the same thing to happen to Justin Fields. That was my main concern. But obviously now with all this news coming out and all these bombshell allegations from Flores himself, it was, it's pretty apparent that maybe it wasn't only him who was responsible for the demise of Tua and the demise of that team.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that he certainly should have gotten at least a second interview. I mean, he's a qualified candidate. I hate to say it, but it's true. He has more qualifications statistically and truthfully than Matt Eberflus. I mean, he's coached in the NFL for 3 years as a head coach, brought Miami, near the playoffs. I mean, he's not necessarily a bad coach, and he has some proven results to his name. So, before all this lawsuit stuff came out, if we're just talking about straight up credentials and numbers, he certainly did warrant a second interview.
And the fact that he didn't get a second interview should tell you something right there, part one, especially with how the Chicago Bears handled this hire. It's like we discussed just a moment ago. Ryan Poles was given a list, was asked to choose from that list, was given no opportunity. So I said this on my show, and I'm pretty sure you've heard it. There's puppet strings right there given to Ryan Poles. They sat him in, they made him smile, they took pictures, and when the pictures stopped, they put puppet strings on him, and here you go with the coaching list.
I mean, that's very possible. I don't know what extent, for sure. We all don't know the extent to which the Bears had an influence, but I agree in the sense that he only had 3 names. I mean, that's the obvious point. Should have been given more names, should have been given more of an opportunity to interview other people. The fact that he came in, and this is proof, and I said this before and I'll say it again, the fact that he came in, Brian, and had 3 finalists already deemed by Bears executives and by the media. I mean, I made a video 2 days before it was hired talking about the finalists. So the fact that there were finalists before the GM was hired should already tell you there's a problem. That means that he didn't interview them. Obviously, it wasn't the GM yet. So he didn't interview them. So the people who interviewed them, at least initially, were George McCaskey, Bill Polian, and Ted Phillips. So that should scare some people, at least, when it comes to how this process went. Now, reportedly, there was some tension when it came to choosing from the 3, and Polian wanted Brian Quinn or Dan Quinn, and Poles said no, and he ended up choosing Eberflus. And hey, kudos to him. When you think about the fact that they share the same agent, well, then there's kind of a conflict of interest there too. So we really don't know whether or not this was the right choice. We're going to find out soon, of course.
Yeah, we are.
The new season starts and gets kicked off. But there were certainly questions and cause for concern when it came to this entire process. And, I wish there could have been more transparency, and there wasn't. And my only hope is that this works out, because Bears fans have been patient for a long time. They've waited a long time. They've been through a number of regime changes just in the past decade. No one wants to see this happen again. At this point, there need to be results, and hopefully Poles and Eberflus are going to be the right choices.
To the NBA with the Chicago Bulls, which has me smiling all over. Did you see this kind of season coming from this group?
Certainly not. Very surprising. I just talked to Mark Shanowski on my program, and we were talking about the same thing. DeMar DeRozan, by far the steal of NBA free agency / the trade market this summer. He's playing at an MVP pace, and not to say that he was bad last year. I looked up his numbers. He wasn't bad. He just wasn't talked about. So the idea or the narrative that he's declining and he's not as publicized, he's not as good, that was just a stupid narrative. DeMar DeRozan played well last year with San Antonio, just got no publicity. Bad team. It's not Tim Duncan, Tony Parker anymore. You got DeMar DeRozan and a bunch of randoms on that team, and that's the exposure you're going to expect for the Bulls to go out and essentially pull off this deal, bring him in. I mean, it's been incredible. It's been incredible what he's done for this team. Averaging 27 points per game, really playing at an MVP pace, in my opinion, and picking them up when Zach LaVine's been down. Usually we talk about Zach LaVine leading this team. He's been hurt. And DeMar DeRozan's picked up the slack. That certainly, to me, is pretty damn valuable. So when we even talk about an MVP conversation, DeMar DeRozan has to be in it, in my opinion.
He does have to be in it because I'll go back to December 31st and January 1st, back-to-back walk-off wins for the Chicago Bulls. DeMar DeRozan provided the difference in both of those games. Both of those were three-pointers, pressure three-pointers, because there was someone in his face. And if you think about it, outside of Chicago, and I'll bring back your point, no one's talking about DeRozan in the MVP conversation, and yet those are two big examples of why DeRozan, A, should be in the MVP conversation, and B, why the Bulls are where they are in the conference.
Exactly. I mean, if you recall, Brian, though, this was how it was for Derrick Rose back in 2010, too. There really wasn't much conversation about Derrick Rose nationally until, obviously, that big dunk against the Suns kind of put him on the map. And ever since then, his profile started to increase. But, I mean, at the beginning and even at the midpoint in that season, nobody said, oh, Derrick Rose is definitely going to be the MVP. No one talked about him. It was only a Chicago thing. Fans started chanting MVP at every game, and then it caught on. Eventually there was a national profile. I think for the Bulls, what's going to make that difference to me is the playoffs. If DeMar DeRozan can continue to ball out like he has, play well in the playoffs, be a good tandem with Zach LaVine, assuming he's healthy, or if he's not healthy, Zach LaVine, put the whole team on his back, DeRozan, and lead this team to a playoff series victory or a couple of playoff series victories or the NBA Finals, if possible. I would certainly put him on the map to a bigger national spotlight and an MVP conversation. The good thing is, hey, made the All-Star team. He's a starter. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Bulls had a starter in the All-Star game. It's unbelievable. So they're playing very, very well. Lots of other guys, too, stepped up. Ayo Dosunmu's been a revelation. I mean, he's been extremely surprising, to say the least. I really didn't expect that out of him. And the steal of the draft, in my opinion. So the Bulls had the steal of offseason free agency and the steal of the draft both in the same couple of months, and that's really propelled them to new heights. And everybody else who's supposed to be playing well is playing well. Vucevic, a bit of a liability defensively, but he's put up good, strong numbers, 19 and 11 or 19 and 12 the last time I checked. Zach LaVine, when healthy, is playing well. Caruso and Ball were playing well until they got hurt. So as long as this team could get healthy, there's certainly an opportunity for them to go very far this year in the playoffs.
I picked at the top of the year, and people thought I was crazy when they asked me my Eastern Conference pick, and I revealed it on my show. I said Bucks Bulls when I'd been blinking. I said it'll be up I-94, and people thought, what? You're picking the Bulls to be one of the best teams in the conference? Yes, sir, I am. I'm sticking with it, and I'm sticking with my pick. And just how exciting of a series. We haven't seen the Bucks play the Bulls in a playoff series since 2015. Before that, 1985. How exciting of an Eastern Conference final would that be?
That'd be extremely exciting. I don't know if the Bucks are going to get there now, especially with that big trade between Philadelphia and Brooklyn. I'm very curious to see how that plays out. And that's going to be a problem for the Bulls, too. I mean, hey, to have James Harden and Joel Embiid on the same team, certainly not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to defend those guys, and if the Bulls had to face them in a series, it would go down to the wire. The same for Brooklyn. You got KD and Ben Simmons, although I don't think Ben Simmons is all that. I think he's a bit overrated, but still, not a basketball player by any stretch. So it's going to be a challenge. That was really a changing trade, a morphing trade for the East. So it's going to be tough for sure, but I could see a Bulls-Bucks series, and if so, that would be a great series. I think it'd be really fun to see both them go at it. I know Pat Connaughton's going to be out for the year now due to surgery, but obviously they still got Giannis. They have other key pieces on the team. You face off against the Bulls, and assuming if they're healthy, you've got Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan going at it, Vucevic. So, I mean, it would be a really star-studded series. I think it'd be great for the NBA. I think it'd be great for Chicago and Milwaukee and those markets, too. So it could really happen, and if it did, I think it would come down to the wire.
It would come down to the wire, indeed. One more question for: are we going to see baseball this year at all? I
I,
I'm itching for it, but I'm not. If that makes sense.
I really hope so, Brian. The Cubs aren't going to be good. I'll just say that right now, and I know a lot of people don't like it when I say that, but it's true. And I'm not a
Hey,
Cubs hater. I'm a
truth
realist when it comes to
truth
that
hurts
team.
a lot. Truth hurts a lot of fans. Do we have to talk about
Exactly.
LeBron? Do we have to talk about LeBron James and the truth I've said about him on this program? And I've been crucified for saying the truth on my show. I don't care. I don't care. All right. I want to see baseball. I know the Cubs aren't going to be any good, but they did the right thing by blowing it up. Now that the White Sox are getting their act together, you want to see an extended run with them. But I got to ask you this, and I've seen a lot of comments on your show when basically last summer you said it's time for the Cubs to blow it up, and they did, and people came after you. Why don't they want to see a competitive team now?
I think people are a bit too spoiled, especially Cubs fans. And look, you should always expect the best from your team. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that Cubs fans are bad or, they're expecting too much. But at some point, we all had to come to the realization that this team was not good. They weren't winning.
Right.
When something isn't working and you got bloated contracts, you got aging veterans, then you got
Mm-hmm.
to blow it up. Sorry. The Cubs
Yeah,
did. I thought it was a great choice. And believe it or not, now I get it, there was no pressure, but they played pretty well in September.
they
They played
did.
like 500 baseball in September with that team.
They
So it
did.
just goes to show you then, a change of scenery for everybody, I think, was necessary. Come next year and the years to come, they could develop their farm system again and rebuild it. I mean, in 3 to 4 years, this team could be good again. In three
Excellent.
to 4 years, the Cubs could actually be not a contender, but they could, nearly win the division, if not get a wild card and sneak into the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
Cubs fans just have to be a little bit patient. I mean, hey, you were patient for a number of years, really from 2009 to 2015. They
Right.
were okay with how things went. So I would hope for the same sort of patience from them. It's certainly not the right way to do it in the sense that there should have been more sustained success.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Astros are still good, right? They didn't have to do a second rebuild, and they don't have to for a time to come
Right.
at this point. So it's unfortunate that the guys that the Cubs bet on didn't last as long. But when you think about it, it was a great run. I mean, 2015 to 2020, you think about all the playoff appearances, all the accolades, a World Series. It's all you could really ask for if you're a Cubs fan. The drought was broken. The team, that was the most successful era in team history, unless we're talking about like 1906 to 1911.
Right.
It's been the most successful era in Cubs history in 100 plus years. So there's really nothing to complain about. I hope they can get back to that point, and it's just going to be a matter of, at this point, developing the guys that you have,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that you could rebuild that farm system so that at the major league level, your product's going to be good.
And on the South side, these young guys that the White Sox have carrying them into the playoffs. They eventually lost to Houston in the division series, but look at this team and how loaded they are with these young guns that they keep bringing up.
And that's the best part. I know the Sox didn't go as far as many people liked them or would have wanted them to last year. Got to remember, 3 to 7 more years still. Really,
Mm-hmm.
3 to 7 more years you have. You got money to spend. I mean, free agency isn't over. But when the lockout ends, or if it ends soon, free agency is not over. There's still
Right.
guys out there that need to be signed, and the White Sox have money to spend. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. A lot of guys are still in the prime or in the twilight of their careers. I mean, Liam Hendricks did great last year. He's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Lance Lynn was signed to an extension. You got a lot of guys out there for this White Sox team who are still going to be there and who are still going to contribute. Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu, all of these guys are coming back. And they learned their lesson from last year. Hey, last year was a growing moment, just like the Cubs in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Cubs made it all the way to the NLCS, didn't win, and they shouldn't have won. They shouldn't have even been in that position at that point.
Exactly.
They weren't experienced enough. It was totally a surprise and such, a cause for celebration for Cubs fans that they even got to that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it should have been for the White Sox last year. This year, they'll heighten expectations. Yes, they should be in the ALCS or World Series, no question. If they're not, yeah, that's a disappointment. But to be mad about how last year went, it's not right. You should be happy that they've finally gotten to a point where they're competitive again. Now they have to build on that come this year.
And just the point that they won they clinched the division on the road. First game of a doubleheader. They did it in Cleveland, and Cleveland has been their tormentor for many years. So to clinch the division in Cleveland, and it was said best, you'll see October baseball for the first time since 2008. Let's keep that. I'm a South Sider. I'm a Sox fan. Let's keep that going on the South Side.
Exactly. I mean, this should be a year of growth. They should build upon last year, and this has to be sustained success. I expect and I would hope for the White Sox to be in the playoffs or be in the conversation for the World Series for the next 3 to 7 years, and that's a realistic expectation. And keep in mind, if they do this right, it could even be longer.
Yes.
If they do it right in replenishing the farm system, if they do not what the Cubs did, but do what the Astros did, we could be talking about 10, 20 years of success.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to them to make sure that they do the right thing, down low at their single A and double A, triple A system.
Mm-hmm.
But at the major league level right now, they have 3 to 7 years at least, if not more. This is their time to compete, and this is the time that you should be excited and happy if you're a White Sox fan, no question.
Jon Z Sports, he's known as on social media. That's Jon Z, the man in charge of Sports Talk Chicago. You can catch his interviews on YouTube. Just check out Sports Talk Chicago over its many outlets. I am a fan. I am a subscriber. I hope you will become one too. This is my connection to my hometown of Chicago. Jon, a pleasure to have you on, my man. I love it. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it. And I'm a subscriber to your channel, too. You put out great stuff, so really appreciate the time. Looking forward to the next time we chat as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's our bonus coverage of Snowman in the Morning. Hope to see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, where we got some more NBA chatter for you. See you then.